Welcome to another episode of Amplifying Your Business. And I'm your host, Stephanie, and I'm really excited to have you on, Gina. We met via social media, but I'm learning so much more that we are connected in more than just the social media aspect. We are both homeschooling moms. We both have produced books and been authors. And we have a lot of the same values and thought processes. So it's amazing to be able to connect with somebody like you who makes me feel like I haven't jumped off the deep end when there's other people like me. And so I feel amazing and excited to be able to bring you to the audience and let the audience meet you. But tell us a little bit of like your homeschooling path, what got you into becoming an author. Tell us a little bit about you.
All right, so I'm a homeschool mom. I've been homeschooling since 2014. My kids, my two older ones were previously in school. They were in a charter school. And it was a great school. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the school itself that I knew at the time. It was just, I was hearing about homeschooling from my church friends, and I was like, I could never do that, like I just could never do that. And then it was just kind of like nagging at me for a while. I realized that during the summer, I was having more success with like my kids' behavior and like attitude because I had more time to spend with them. And then I remember like the first day they came back from school, the first like day of school, it was like I felt like it all went out the window again, And so I don't know, it just kind of kept nagging at me. And my friend was like, hey, have you ever seen this movie called Indoctrination? I'm like, no. She's like, here, you need to watch this. So yeah, I was like blown away by this movie. I cried and I was like, they're not going back. I can't send it back. Because I didn't realize the agenda of the government. I didn't know all the hidden, little things that they were just putting in my kids' brains. So I talked to my husband about it, and he was like, kind of like, you're crazy in a way, like, what are you thinking? Like, that's insane. And I was like, well, I just really feel like this is what I need to do, and so after that year, we pulled him out, and I was like going down this crazy, like, bout of depression. I just had a baby, so I had like all these hormones going on and, postpartum depression and all that stuff. And thankfully my church family, like they helped me. They bought me curriculum and, showed me what to do and all this stuff. And it was great. And then the second year, the first day we started, it was totally crazy. And I had spent the whole summer just making it amazing. So I'm like all upset and I'm calling all these like schools, like private schools. How much is it to send my kids? Because I was like, I know I can't send them back to public school. Just personally, I just couldn't do it. But I'm like, I don't know that I can afford a Christian school. So I call my husband. I'm like, I don't know what to do, but I can't do this anymore. And he's like, wait, you're giving up after all this work that you did? And I'm like, well, no, I guess not. So yeah, we persevered, and that ended up being probably one of our like most fun years. Like we just had such a good time. We joined a really awesome co-op that had all these cool things, and the kids got to do like presentations and all these cool like field trips, and yeah, it's been fun, but it's hard too, which I'm sure you know that too. But yeah, like I'm so glad that we did it overall. And, people will say like, oh, well, they're missing out on all these things. But I mean, there's so many opportunities that we have like that they don't have. Um, yeah, like just like the simple fact of if my husband's home that day and we want to like go to the zoo, I mean, we can do that, or like today, I mean, I'm kind of busy, so we're probably just going to do like a half day, and so what? I mean, whatever. but yeah, like we love that flexibility, and just to know that they're not being exposed. I mean, they are exposed to the things of this world, but kind of through a filter, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like trying to teach them the right way to look at certain things, and not that I'm perfect at it by any means, but the things that they would be getting exposed to at school and not being told that it's wrong, you know, they're not getting that part. So I'm thankful for that, you know. But as far as the writing goes, that's just been kind of something that's kind of been like on my mind for a few years. And I saw these teenagers doing it, and I'm like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Um, but then I don't know, it just kind of went on the back burner. And then I came across like a, I don't know, a free class, I guess, on Facebook. And I'm like, okay, let me check this out. So then I worked really, really hard on this book that I made. And as I showed you a minute ago, found out there's a word missing. Woohoo! After I printed 500 copies. So now I'm on to my new one. I'm really excited about this one. This one is a chapter book. I have professional editor, professional illustrator. This is Sarah. This is the main character. So she's 10, and she has two siblings, John and Sophie, and they are excited for Christmas and winter, but there's no snow, and they live in Illinois. So typically there's snow like by Thanksgiving. So this is really weird for them. They're really upset. They're like, where is the snow? It's just not coming. So they have to make all this fun without it. But they do all sorts of things. They go to Chicago to see the Nutcracker, and she gets this special dress that I actually have a seamstress here locally that is making 30 of them for me to sell on my Kickstarter. So I'm really excited about that, because it's like Sarah's dress, like her special dress that she wore to the Nutcracker. And so my daughter got one. She got like the prototype, and she loves it. Um, it's cool though, because it's based off the 90s. So it's very like nostalgic for us moms. And I just felt the need to make something kind of like the old classics, but like newer.
Mhm.
Because as we were talking previously, just the things that the kids are coming across in the library nowadays. Um, I mean, and we can't monitor everything, obviously, but I think that it would be a really fun read for the parents to read out loud during homeschooling time, and just knowing that it's something wholesome for the kids to read. I share the gospel in one of the scenes. When I was a kid, my grandpa, every Christmas, he would sit on the stairs and read the Christmas story to us before we opened presents. And as a kid, I mean, it didn't really like do much for me. Like I just wanted my gifts. But as an adult, like looking back, I treasure that, and I'm so thankful that he planted that seed, in me. So yeah, I'm just excited about this story. It's wholesome. It's a traditional family, a husband and a wife and kids that love each other, and they're homeschooled. So they get to sit around the fire and listen to mom read history and Little House on the Prairie, and
Mhm.
um, they get to, go outside and play like before school on certain special days, which um, they finally do get a snow day, but it takes a long time for that. And Sarah, she's been dying for this special gift since she was 3, for Christmas, and she's never gotten it. So she's hoping that now that she's 10, that she'll get this special gift. But you guys will have to wait and see about that one. So,
I
but yeah,
love it.
I'm
I
excited.
truly, truly adore everything about it.
Thank
Um,
you.
I mean, as a homeschooling mom myself, I get that concept of wanting to, you get that urge, right? You get that prompting, you get that calling. You're like, I don't know if I'm prepared for this. I don't know if I'm ready for this. Like, why are you asking me to do this? And you kind of question doubt, and you're like, maybe, I don't know. And it's this like nagging, and it's a true nagging because
Yeah,
mine
it
was the
is.
same way. It sat there and I was like, oh, I'm like, really? You want me to pull my kids? Like, are you sure? Is this right? Where, like, and I
Yeah.
continued to get homeschooling and homeschooling and homeschooling. And then I told my husband, and I was like, I think I want to homeschool the kids. He's like, have you jumped off the deep end? Like, are you nuts? And I was like, yeah, I do. Like, I want to homeschool them. I want to put the disclaimer out that I started going to college to teach high school and middle school science. So teaching is in my nature. Like, that's just normal for me. But my husband was like, still, you want to take the kids home? Like, you want to do this. And I had just found out I was pregnant with my fourth. He's like, how are you going to manage all of that? Like,
Mhm.
are you sure?
Oh
And I
yeah.
left it for a good 6 months. Like, I left it for 6 months and I was like, I don't know why this is still pulling at me. And
Mhm.
so I finally looked at my husband and I was like, I think we need to do this. I think I'm going to do it. And he was really not looking forward to it. He was like, I don't think it'll be good. It'll, like, very negative about the concept. And I was like, well, I'm going to do this with or without you. Like, you can support us or you don't, but I'm going to do this. And it was one of the greatest decisions we did to pull him home.
Yeah.
And there was less fighting, there was more joy, there was less stress, more excitement. We
Mhm.
got to do field trips all the time. Like, I planned field trips at least once a week.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I want learning to be something you do, not just read. Like, that was just how I looked at it.
Right,
Um,
like more hands-on.
yeah, and with us living in Chicago, I was like, how are we not, like, we have every kind of museum you can think of. Like, there's a science museum, there's a history museum, there's a planetarium, there's the aquarium, like the Shed Aquarium. Like, why would I not be using these things and going and taking my kids to experience life, and experience the lesson and teach via doing instead of just through a textbook. Like, they got to go to my husband's job site every once in a while, and
That's
we
awesome.
learned about different trades and jobs and things that they do, and like the science and the math behind it and the reading behind it. And like, we got to see, where does this book take me in real life, like taking the thing we do and putting it in real life. And it was great. It was
That's so
so
cool.
fun. And I did hear the, like, how are you going to socialize them? This is going to stunt them. And all the negative that I know you have heard.
Oh yeah. So here this one. How are you going to socialize your kids? I move my mouth and I talk to them. Like, we don't live in a cave. But okay, so I didn't know you lived in Chicago. My book is based in Illinois. I don't know if I told you that. So they go to the Science and Industry Museum. They go to the Schubert Theater to see the Nutcracker.
Yeah.
There's Jay's potato chips in there. Just,
Yeah.
like all the Chicago things. So that's so cool that I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
I
mean,
grew up in Chicago, in Illinois, so it's based off like my childhood home, basically. Um,
yeah. And I love it. That's why when you said it's from Chicago, I was like, oh, this is coming home.
yeah.
Because I was born and raised here in Chicago, and so was my husband. So for us,
Awesome.
the having snow by Thanksgiving, it's usually, now it's snow by Halloween. If you don't, if
Right. I
you
remember that. Oh,
if you don't have snow on Halloween, it's a great year. And if you can keep, you always plan your Halloween costume around being a size or two bigger, because you're gonna need to put layers underneath, because if it's not raining, it'll be snowing, or it's gonna be
yeah.
super cold,
Yep.
and you always wear warm costumes. So your cute little
Oh,
princess outfit never gets seen because it's
yep. I
under your
remember that. And
jacket.
it's funny because we went from that to then we moved to Florida when I was 15 when my parents got divorced. And so like dressing up in costumes, you're like dying of heat, you know? So it's like the opposite. And now we're in West Virginia. So now we're kind of sort of back to Illinois, but like not quite. It's not as cold. It's not like we get snow, but not like consistently, not as much, stuff like that. But yeah, that's funny. Um, so where in are you in the city of Chicago or?
I'm just south of the city. So I'm the south suburbs of the city.
Okay.
It only
That's
takes me
awesome.
like 30 minutes to get into the city when
That's
not
cool.
doing rush hour. When I divert rush hour, it's only about 30 minutes. So it's
That's
kind of
so
nice.
awesome. Yeah, we were like an hour west. So
Okay.
like I don't know if you know like DeKalb, St. Charles
Yep.
area. So we were like a super tiny little town that nobody knows, but it was like in that area. But we used to love taking the double-decker bus or not bus, train up to the
Uh-huh.
city, and we would like spend the whole day and walk around. And so yeah, it was a really nostalgic book for me, just because like I basically relived my childhood in writing this book and included a whole bunch of my kids' childhood in it. So it's fiction, but it has a lot of memories in it. So it was really fun, especially like my parents passed away. So just having like my childhood again, kind of writing was just, I don't know. It was really cool. So
And
yeah, I
I
think
think that's
parents,
something
yeah,
that's really fun to I think most people don't think about when they're like writing. They're like, well, it's got to be super structured, or it's got to be over this topic, or like, oh, the big thing right now is a romance novel, or I can't talk about a kid's book. How do I get into the
right,
perspective of a child, or I got to write a self-help book? And it's like, no, you can write about anything, truly
right.
anything and everything. And it can be fictional and based off of your life still, of like, okay, what did you find joyful in your childhood? Was it going to the city and taking the train? Like, was it like, I've always dreamed that, like, going to New York City at Christmas and walking the storefronts and seeing a play at New York would be like so Christmas, and that's like the epic Christmas. So maybe I make a book about that, like,
Yeah.
or you can talk about faith. You can talk about really truly anything you have any knowledge about. You can put into a book, and it doesn't have to, like I tell everybody, I'm like, it doesn't have to be something that you turn into a business. It doesn't have to be something that maybe makes you millions. It can just be another book to add to your homeschooling routine and hope that others will put into their homeschooling routine.
Yeah, and
And
it's like, if there's a book that you want to read that hasn't been written, then write it.
yeah.
And I don't know, like there's all these fantasy books and all that, and that's awesome. But like, I don't know, I realized I don't have like honestly, I don't have that great of an imagination. So to me, like having it kind of based off of like real life events and yeah, like I, maybe exaggerated here or there, or added stuff or didn't say everything exactly. Like it's not all true. But it helped, it inspired me, to write this story. And actually the whole idea came from when my son was like 6. We used to go to the dollar store and I would give them each money to buy something for the whole family, like so they'd have like $5 or $6. And so my daughter was like 9 or 10 and he was probably 6. So I would like let them go, but I would kind of, I would watch them, obviously. And it was a small store, but I would like peek around. Well, of course they didn't want us to see the gifts, right? So they would put them in the basket. But this time my son had a broom, and clearly you can't hide a broom. Like it's not really hideable, or that's not really a word, but so I would like see him and he'd be like peeking around the corner, like to see if I'm watching. And then he'd like sneak and like run across, and it was like hilarious and so funny because he's like desperately trying to hide this thing from me. And like there's people in the store, they'd come up to me and they're like, that is the sweetest thing ever. And then he came home and like wrapped it all perfectly. And like you could totally tell, like it's a broom and the wrapping
Right.
paper. Like there's just no hiding it. Um, so I don't know, it was just hilarious to me. And it just, I don't know, I wanted that in my book, but I'm like, obviously I can't write a book just about a broom. So yeah, then just all these childhood memories started coming back and flooding my brain. And yeah, it was a really fun project. So, and I've got 3 more on the horizon. So it'll be like a series eventually once I get going with those ones. So
That's incredible.
yeah,
And
I'm
it's
excited.
interesting how one idea, one moment of
Right.
your child just being the sweetest kid out there, right? it can spark not just an idea, but bring emotions back to you, which then turns into a book, which then turns into a series. Like it's the snowball effect of how one moment can be all that it takes. Like I've had this, I deal with, my oldest is 14, and I say I deal with, but you notice this essence at those teen years of like trying to figure out who they are, right? Like, who am I? And my daughter is extra confident in herself. And I'm like, man, if I only had your confidence at 14, this world would be a whole different place for me. Like, it would have been a whole different place. And that's when I was like, boom, done. Like, you need to have a book that talks about finding your identity in a solid foundation. But you talk about it as a child, you talk about it from the teen's perspective, and then you talk about it as an adult, because as an adult, I had to learn who I was and find my identity as a mom of 4 and a wife and all the other labels, and how to take those labels and remove them, right? And why me? Who am I? Right? And it's this question that I think is an age-old question, but we forget sometimes that it's the small things. Looking at life through a child's eyes can change us. We forget to have fun as an adult. So sometimes reading that book is probably going to be one of those like, oh, I remember that, or I love that. And it's those one things that sometimes we just need to speak our words and share our words more than we need to doubt. Because I think that's the other part that comes in.
Oh yeah. It's like, I mean, who am I? Like, no one's gonna care about my books. Like, I mean, I'm just a mom. Like, no, I'm nobody special, but I have a message that I want to share. I want the books to, I don't know, I want our kids to like see what a traditional family is supposed to be like. Not that, I mean, it's basically like The Perfect Family is the book, and obviously that doesn't exist, right? But it still shows what a father is supposed to do. What is their role in the home to, read the Bible to their kids and raise them up in the word. And, a mom's job is to take care of the children and keep the home, and they work together in that too. But yeah, I mean, and God uses the lowly, right? Like, he doesn't use like I don't have to be famous or a millionaire or anybody special for God to use me. Hopefully my book will, I don't know, just, I mean, the gospel is in it, and faith comes from hearing, right? So hopefully some seeds will be planted, and I don't know, just hopefully it'll impact someone, and it'll be fun too in the process to read it. So,
and that's one thing when I was doing mine, I said, as long as one person benefits, this is all worth it, right? I don't want to necessarily, I mean, if I made millions off of it, fab, love that, great for me. But that wasn't my intention. It was never about the money. It was always about, who can I serve? How can I help? I saw a gap, so I'm going to fill the gap, right? Like, I'm just seeing and doing, right? As prompted to do. But what kind of advice do you have, or what words of wisdom would you give that maybe that mom or those parents that are facing this like question of, maybe we're called to homeschool, maybe that's where our kids are going to be going? What kind of things or advice would you give them, especially if you could go back and talk to yourself from 10 years ago?
Oh man. I would say, number one, I know that it's not necessarily possible for everybody, so I get it. And I'm not saying this in judgment, but if you're a Christian, it just seems that there is no place for you in the public school system. Now I know people are gonna like probably bash me and say, well, they need to be salt and light. Okay, I get that, but how is like a 5-year-old going to have that foundation or the confidence or you know, I mean, maybe like when they're older, if they're like super grounded and all that stuff, I understand. And I know that it's not everyone is able to do it. So I get it. I just I think that it's something that God calls all Christian parents because think about it. Like the government doesn't own our children. We don't co-parent with the government. Like they're ours. God gave them to us. Well, they're his, but he gave them to us to raise. You know, he didn't give them to the government. Now it serves a purpose. I mean, we need public schools. Absolutely, we need them. But and I think throughout like your homeschooling journey, you're always going to doubt periodically. I mean, am I doing enough? Are they getting what they need? Are they, you know, all this stuff? But what do they need? More importantly, they need life skills. They need to be taught right and wrong. They need to have morals, you know, all that stuff. Um, so, and they will get the socialization. I mean, there's so many things like we talk to our kids. Obviously, they talk to us. If they have siblings, or you know, you can go to a co-op, which we've done. We have a co-op now. There's lots of field trips you can take. Even we even have homeschool proms and homecomings. So it's not like they miss out. I mean, it's not going to be the same, but they still get to have those things. They still get to do things with other people. And yeah, I mean, I think that you can do it. It's going to seem like you can't, but you can, you
Yeah.
know, and God will help you and direct you through it and give you endurance, perseverance. So
Yeah, I agree 100%. I am one of those that if you are prompted towards homeschooling, there's a reason. I mean, there's a 100% reason why you're called to do it. You might sit there in doubt, you might question, you might be like, what, but really? And some people are equipped for it, right? Like some of us are like, we just roll with the punches, and others
yeah,
are like, no way, I could not do that. Most likely the no way, I can't do that is probably not going to get prompted or called to do that. So there's a hint.
yeah,
But I think that those who are called need to just ask that, you know, answer that calling, take that moment and
yeah,
understand and trust and believe that, you know what, you're going to be handed and guided in the way that you need to go. Yeah, there's going to be, I mean, that first year of mine was a couple of misses and fumbles. We found, and I was like, oh, I found an online curriculum, it's going to be so great. And then it ended up being where I found out my kids were just Googling the answers and not going through the lesson.
yeah,
So that's that one temptation, you know, like, and so
yeah,
it was nice to have physical books in hand that we read. It removed them from that technology era of like, just Google it, just keep, you
right.
know, like pushing the technology. They got to read books and interact with each other, and they created bonds that I think are inseparable
Oh yeah,
as siblings.
definitely.
Going through that experience together. My kids, we started the year before the pandemic. We did the year of the pandemic and the year after. And so it ended up being one of those perfect timings where I was like, I didn't realize this was all going to happen, but I didn't have to deal with any of the like e-learning and all of that. And I
Yeah,
was worried many times, like, could I send them back? Am I enough right now that I've done enough? And every year we did a state testing. Like Illinois doesn't make you do anything other than pull them out of the schools. So I do suggest looking into what is required from your schools, what is required
yeah,
from your state, like do the
true.
research on it. But Illinois only asked you to pull them from schools. And I was like, okay, fine. And then when they re-registered, they re-registered them as their age. Like wherever you should be for your age is where you're going.
Right.
And I every year would do a test, just a state testing, just to see, you know, like, are we learning? But I wasn't teaching to a test. So I continued to tell my kids that this test means nothing. It just kind of shows me
Right.
information, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's And I hate to say this, but I would tell him, I was like, it's to show dad what we're doing. And I had to reiterate every year when the test came back and maybe my kids didn't do the hottest or they didn't have 100%. And I was like, we're not testing and learning for a test.
Right. Yeah.
I teach them to teach them. I teach them life skills. I teach them not because of a test, but because of what they are able to and can learn. And, and so that was a big thing. It was different. It was different because I was teaching them honest, real experiences, real things, not just to regurgitate information. I didn't want you just to be able to tell me the definition of this. I wanted you to tell me the definition and then explain it. What, like, give me the layman's terms, like,
right.
You know? And so I feel like if you're being called, step forward. It is your calling. And you can do it. You can do it for sure.
Yeah, I think like, you know, we're always going to think that we're not doing enough. But if you think about it, in the public school systems, like they don't finish all their books all the time either. Like sometimes, you know what I mean? And like as an adult, to be honest, I've learned more as an adult through homeschooling my kids than I ever did in school. And the reason is because I didn't want to learn. I didn't care to learn at that time in my life. Now, some kids do. I didn't really care to learn at that time in my life. And I feel like when the kids want to learn something, they're going to learn it. But if they're just being fed information that they don't care about, I mean, you know, so like the busy work, I mean, it's not going to really help them much. But if they miss something that we didn't teach them as an adult, well, go learn it. Go right. get a program online or go find a book at the library. Like teaching them how to learn on their own, you know, is I think more important than making sure that they get all of the information, you know. But also too, what I really love is that we can cater to like what they like, you know. We can do, like my son, he wants to be a franchise owner. So next year I'm like, well, he's gonna be a junior, so I'm gonna make sure he takes like business, marketing, you know, like how to do his taxes, you know, like stuff like that. Like I don't know, do they teach taxes in school now?
No, they don't.
I mean, that's a life skill, right? That's something that you need to know. Just, you know, certain things like that, or like there's days where I'm super busy and I can't, like my 10-year-old, she still needs a lot of help. And it's not really like that she doesn't know how to do it. It's more that she gets really distracted if I'm not like helping, like if I'm not sitting with her and keeping her on track. I'll like walk away and I'll come back, and instead of her doing her math, she's like drawing a picture, you know? Yeah. So it's just, a lot of times I have to sit with her just to kind of keep her going. But if I'm busy and I can't do that, if I'm cooking lunch, like sometimes I'll just be like, okay, it's cooking class, throw on your apron. And like, she comes and helps me cook lunch, you know, cut an onion for me, cut the potatoes, you know, whatever. And it doesn't seem like they're learning because it's like, oh, they're not doing problems on a paper, or, but they are, because it's like hands-on practical skills. And those are the things that they're going to remember later on in life. They might not remember, you know, how to do like 2 times X divided by Y, but like, I don't know, not that that's not important, but like, it's kind of more important that they know how to cook and, you know, do their taxes. And, so yeah, I mean, just they're not going to learn everything, but we don't know everything as adults either. So
exactly.
I mean, it's okay, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you said being able to educate them to what they like, and teaching them how to learn, is super important, because like I have a child who has ADHD, and for many years she was just told, well, we need to separate you from everyone else. Right? Like, oh, just make her the little island. Like she can't do group work. And it was very negative towards the educational system for her. Because she was told to sit down and she can't sit. She was told to be quiet, and quiet is not my daughter. Like she is anything from quiet. And so by taking her and being able to homeschooling her, she learned how she learns. She learned not just to teach to her, but how does she learn? She needs music on, and she can repeat anything and everything you want her to, especially if there's music involved. She will reiterate it and tell you more and learn more because there's music. She needs noise to silence her own mind. She needs to kind of
like we're able to like learn that, like, and recognize that. Like I do think that's kind of can be hard to figure out the kids' learning styles, or if you have multiple kids, but
yes,
it is a perk of homeschooling because they're not going to cater to your child in the public school. They're not going to say, well, your daughter can have music on.
No,
you know what I mean?
She had to conform. She
Right.
had to conform to the norm, which she was not. She was anything from normal. I mean, she's normal. She's a normal kid, but in the learning sense, she couldn't just sit at a desk and do work.
Yeah.
That she toned out when you handed the paper to her. She was done. And my other one was a quick learner. So if you didn't challenge him, he would be bored almost instantly. And so I had to learn very quickly, okay, well, I have to pace one kid differently and slower, but love her through it. And the other one I had to super challenge, and they had to experience competition. Granted, it was friendly competition, and understanding that, like, well, just because your brother understands this faster than you doesn't make you unintelligent. It doesn't negate what you know. I was like, he just learns differently than you do.
Exactly.
And it was just this opportunity of like, okay, well, if he knows it, ask him how he knows it. And we had to be vulnerable and humility and understanding that, like, you know what? I learn differently. Can you explain to me that what you're learning or how you understand it? And it was a total like experience beyond just what a test can tell you. Do you know 2 + 2? It was life skills. It was connection. It was human interaction. It was learning about yourself because, like I said, both kids had to learn, how do I learn? How do I use my voice that I was God-given voice? How do I use it to advocate for myself, to speak for myself, to share constructively with others that gets to a point? And it, I won't say it was the greatest experience to be able to experience it. Was it easy? Not always. Did it have its challenges? Yeah, a lot of the time. But at the same time, I was like you, I started a business while homeschooling my kids. And it was the greatest thing. They loved it. They learned with me. They learned and interacted with me. They were participants in the moment. They understood that maybe, you know what, mom had to take 10 to go answer this call or to go do this email. They got their chores done. They worked together to give me a quiet moment if I needed it. But I think another dying question that I know every listener is gonna be like, this is all wonderful information. Like, I'm so glad for you both that you were able to do this, is how? How did you find time to be the homeschooling parent, to be the person that you were called to be as a mom, but also understand that you were called more than just a mom? That mom title is amazing and it's important, but it's not the only thing you were created to do. So how did you balance this concept and find time for the writing and find time to kind of, dive into that essence of you or part of you that mom life and homeschooling mom doesn't get to tap into and find that time for it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that, at least for us, when we're homeschooling, we can get it done pretty quickly. Or I don't know if that's the case for you, but just because we're not doing the busy work, we're just like, we're doing it and we're done, so that, but then my husband works nights, so a lot of times, like, if I need to stay up late, I can do writing during that time because I don't have to like talk to him, or like, not that I don't want him to be home, but you know, just, or there was a time when we first moved here, my daughter was having a hard time falling asleep by herself. So I would sit in her room on her floor and just wait for her to fall asleep, and I'd be on my computer, like, you know, writing or something. And then she'd be asleep for like an hour, and I'm like still going. And then I'm like, oh, I don't have to be in here anymore, but like I'm just like in the zone, you know. Um, but yeah, I think just with homeschooling, like it is a lot of responsibility, but at the same time, there is so much flexibility too.
Mhm.
Because, you know, like we don't have, I mean, some moms are like really great about having a schedule, but we don't have a schedule. I mean, we're just like, when we can get our school done, that's when we can get our school done. And then my son, he's 16, so he does pretty much all his stuff on his own. Like he'll just, if he needs help, I'll help him, or give him direction and stuff like that. But for the most part, he does his own thing. And then, so yeah, I mean, I think it's because we can get it done so quickly that I'm able to take some time to do that kind of thing. But also, I'm like an entrepreneur like you, and I don't know about you, but like I have to make time for that kind of stuff. Like mentally, emotionally, because I don't know, like I've always been kind of like I have to make things and sell it, or I have to do this, and because I don't know, I just want to share my stuff with the world and make money for my family in the same at the same time. Like um I don't want to go get a 9 to 5 because homeschooling is what I'm doing. And you know, I can do like side jobs, like I do catering. I work for a catering company, but that's like here and there. It's not like, so I'm able to homeschool still, you know, which is awesome. I wouldn't want to have a 9 to 5 where I couldn't homeschool, but at the same time I need to do something just
Yes.
for myself. Like I'm just that kind of person. I can't sit still. And I think pretty much all entrepreneurs are like that. Any of them that I've met, it's like they're always thinking of the next thing to do. But yeah, writing just was kind of just there for a while. And even back like when my parents passed away, someone was like, you know, yeah, like you've been through so much. And, you know, I was like, maybe I'll write a book one day, you know. But then I don't want to write a book about myself. I don't need to do that. I would much rather write a book about bring my memories in, but as a fiction, you know, not about me. That's, I don't know. I wouldn't want to, at least not this time in my life. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, we just have to do it. It's like, it's in there. So
Yes. And it's funny that
I
you say that
yeah,
because I'm the exact same way. Like, you know, some people do the gym and that's their like mental
yeah,
space. And I love that for them. And other people, it's like, I gotta do, create, make, fix, you know, like I am full-fledged, like my business at this point in my life, I should say, my business and what I do and podcasting, showing people and amplifying businesses. That's what I do. I do that and I love that. That's my like putting the mom hat down and putting the wife hat down and putting all the hats and titles that you wear, putting them down and going, okay, what do I like? Like, what is that for me? Um, I remember you said you were sitting on your daughter's floor while she would fall asleep. And that was literally the first year of my fourth, when I had my fourth, and she just wanted somebody there. Like,
yeah,
you didn't have to
exactly.
hold her to put her to bed. You know, certain nights she would just like, you would just have to put your hand in the crib. So I would sit on the floor and I would read a book. Like it was all self-help books to try and make, you know, monitor my baby blues and the postpartum depression. I was trying to figure out who I was after this whole like all the mom titles that I've been thrown. I was trying to figure out who I was. And I remember sitting down and she would be in her crib and I would be sitting there just trying to like be the presence for her. I'd be 7 chapters in and this kid be sound asleep in the first 10 minutes. And my husband's like, why are you still in here? I was like, I am in the middle of a good book. Hold on a minute. He's like, you are no longer needed in here. And I was like, but I'm needed here. Does that
Right.
count? Like I'm needed in the book though.
Yeah.
Like, and you
I
just
know,
you
like all of a
forget.
sudden you realize it's 1 in the morning, you're like, oh,
I could actually go to bed now. Like,
yeah.
awesome.
So, but yeah, so I don't know. So,
But I think it's awesome. So I thank you for coming and sharing
yeah, thank you
bits
so
of
much.
you, bits of this process that I feel like so many of us go through is this, well, am I really called here? Am I really called there? How do I step forward? How do I make time to do it all? And a lot of us moms, we question, can I do it all? Can I be a great mom and still do something that makes me excited? And understanding that, you know what, there's flexibility, there's the ability. And if you have that strong foundation and core, if he's called you to do it, he's not going to let you down. Like, he's going to provide for you in all essences. And
Exactly.
I think
and
that
we're not going to do it perfectly. I mean, let's face it, we're just not. But that's okay. I mean, it's like a learning experience, and you know, hopefully we grow and learn through it all. And so,
and it makes us all a better person. Like, that's just one thing. I'm like, having homeschooling and starting a business are two of the most humbling experiences of my life.
Yes. And I don't know if for me, at least, homeschooling has been a sanctifying tool for sure. Oh, buddy.
Yes, it is.
Sure.
It's a whole experience. Be ready. It is more than just teaching them. There is, it's a whole, like, it's an experience. But it's the greatest one.
Yeah.
You know, like, my husband still to this day will tell me, he's like, it's because you homeschooled that you have the connections you do with the kids. Aww. And I was like, maybe they see me that way. Maybe they see it because I took that space, and then I wore multiple hats. I wore the teacher, and I wore the parent, and I wore the different experiences that they had. Maybe it's because I experienced those things with them. I was like, or maybe it's just because I'm mom. Sorry, like, so sorry. I don't know what to tell you. So I'm like, you can create those experiences, but it's up to you. You got to make it happen, you know? And so it's been an experience. And so, how do we get in touch with you, whether it's to purchase your books, because I know I will be getting my hands on them. But also especially
hold on,
especially when your book shows, when your next one comes out, I really just want that one. So where do we get in touch with you? If maybe it's homeschooling questions, maybe it's author questions, maybe it's to get your book. Where do we go? How do we find you?
Okay, so I'm on Facebook, Gina Morgan Handerhan. So I have my maiden name as like a hyphen because I wanted my old schoolmates in Illinois to be able to find me. So it's still like that. So I'm on there, and then also Gina's author journey on Facebook. I have a page on there too. I'm on Instagram, and I just created a TikTok, which is like weird, but I guess I'm cool now because I have TikTok, which is like, I don't know. I'm like, I guess I'm like a cool mom. Anyway, so I have a website too. It's ginahanderhanauthor.com. And then the Kickstarter, which will be starting April 16th. I'm really, really excited about that. You'll be able to get my book cheaper than, you know, when it comes out in November. And so that's just like the pre-orders. There's all kinds of merch for that too. Like I said, the dress for Sarah, and that'll come in all sizes, but there's only 30. So you got to jump on that if you want the dress. There'll be baked potato chips involved. There'll be some homemade candles that are from the book, and some crocheted items from the book, all things like just book related that is exclusive for the Kickstarter. And that link is like a super long link, so I can't really like say it, but maybe we can just post it down below.
Yeah, I'll make sure it hits the show notes for you.
Okay, awesome. So that the pre-orders is only for 30 days. So after that, if you want my book, you got to wait till it's published on Amazon, and Lord willing, that will be November 1st. So
awesome. Well, I'm excited. I know I will be setting alarms and making sure that I get my Kickstarter, because all things Chicago is coming home for me. And I hope I don't care if my kids read it or not, I'm reading it. And then I will have them read it also. So
thank you so much for having me. Like, this has been really fun.
Of course, I'm so excited. And I'm really grateful that you have answered the calling that you've been called to. And choose to step forward as he's called you to, because it's moving mountains. I promise. It might not always feel like it, but I promise you're moving mountains. You're creating the next generation, and you're doing amazing work. So thank you so much. And
Thank
guys,
you
make
so
sure you go
much.
ahead and follow Gina. Go follow her on social media, find out, and make sure you're marking your calendars for that for her launch before it goes on sale, and get your Kickstarter. And make sure you're also following along the podcast and my socials so that, well, I'm stepping away from socials. So there's the difficulty there. But at least for the business, I am stepping towards the podcast itself. So make sure you're following along on the podcast and all those avenues there. And you're following everywhere, because you never know who's going to be on for our next spotlight and our next business. But you also never know what kind of information we're going to be putting out, because you might be the next author, you might be the next big podcaster, you might be the next somebody, and you might be called towards it. So step forward faithfully and know that you've been called. But thank you for listening, guys, and follow along for more.
Thank you.